Welcome back to the Win with Dice podcast, a podcast featuring members of the Win with Dice team. I'm Calvin, and I'm joined here by Ramon.
Hey guys, this is your first time listening to the Win with Dice podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about tabletop RPGs, running them and playing them. Calvin and I like to take a casual approach to the hobby, and we would just like to talk about, our games that we run and the games that we play in and all the cool, wonderful people we play them with.
Exactly. Now, this week we wanted to get more into the development and the state of the Grand Saga TTRPG, name pending, that Ramon has been working on. Today specifically, we just wanted to get into some of the classes of the RPG, some of their abilities and how they might work together and function and things like that. But before we get into that fun stuff, we have to get to the most important part of the show, the Win with Dice Weekly GM Tip of the Week.
Yes, the Win with Dice Weekly GM Tip of the Week, brought to you by Ramon, because I had a cool idea. Actually, I just started using this program called Milanote. So it's like an online browser-based, basically like idea organizer. So it's kind of like for project planning and stuff like that. But they also have like preset tabs or like preset settings that you can do for like a tabletop RPG campaign or like a session or stuff like that, or as well as like just like a storyboard or like a, I guess, it would be a storyboard. So in case you wanted to visualize information that way, I find it really useful. Like, I mean, recently, as in like maybe this last week, I was like, man, this program's really good because I'm a visual thinker. So I really, really do love using flowcharts, and this is a really easy way to kind of group ideas, group images specifically, and you can just drag the links from different websites, different pages onto Milanote, and it'll make a thumbnail for you of it. So you don't have to, remember like what this link is or whatever. As well as you can organize them in like columns and like, put different stuff into different groups. So, you can, during the session, you can be like, okay, what's the next plot point? What's the next thing we got to do? Or even like you can put your tables in there. So definitely in the process of reorganizing my life once again into this program for all of my campaigns that are hiatus and about to get back on there. So so I don't know. I thought if you're a visual GM like me, or at least for planning purposes, definitely check out Milanote. That's like a pretty good program.
Yeah, maybe one day we get a sponsorship.
Yeah, I know. I was like, there's tons of Milanote sponsorships, but I was like, this is free. It's
yeah,
free. So
I didn't know.
How are they getting paid?
I didn't know it was free actually, because I've heard people bring it up before, but I thought it was like a paid program, so I didn't dive too deeply into it. I've mostly just been using OneNote, and that kind of flows with how I like to organize things better. But looking at Milanote, I can see definitely if you're more like visual focused, that's definitely something that I think will work better in this.
Yeah, they do give a limit to like the amount of items you have in notes. So you only have like 100 items. So every like image and like link and like note counts as like an item.
Right.
So if you do want to have more of an extensive I guess like planning process, or you need your board to be bigger, you can upgrade for more space. But for purposes of like making like a session really quickly, or like just jotting down like some notes, because I'm a minimal DM, so I like to just kind of have my napkin ready to go. So yeah, I think this is how they get their money.
Yeah, one day, #sponsor. I mean, I have used other things like Trello, but that's mostly for like organizing a work schedule sort of thing, or just like stuff I want to get done if I'm doing a game dev project. I haven't tried Milanote, but maybe I'll look into it, see how it feels.
Yeah, for sure. There you go, folks. That's your Win with Dice Weekly GM Tip of the Week.
Cool. All right, well, let's get into the episode proper. So last week we started talking about Grand Saga, some of the more mechanical stuff, and making a character in that game. So today I wanted to get to what is my personal favorite part of this concept so far, is the classist. My personal
The classist. those high. Can we make
Class
a joke?
Says. No. We made a joke about it, and I have to keep it in. The classes of the game. So there's however many. I'm sure you've counted, but I have not.
Yes, I have totally counted.
Okay, well, we'll count them today.
It's 30 plus. I'm pretty sure.
So I don't know if we'll go through every single one and each of their abilities, but I did want to we could talk about like how they function, why you made them that way, and any other interesting notes you find about them. So let's just start at A, and of course, if you want to, there's a link below to the draft Google Doc of this game. You can check it out and follow along, or give it a try and try playing it yourself. And if you have any questions or issues, there's going to be a link below, and also in the document itself, to a contact form on our website. You can message us through there. You can message us on social media. You can just send an email. I think you can find our email through the YouTube page. So any one of those, and it'll be seen.
Yeah, many ways to reach us. So go forth.
Exactly.
And tell me how my game is incorrect, and I'll fix it.
And if Milano wants to sponsor us,
yeah, Milano, if you're listening, we will do an ad read, please. I'm kidding, but not. Okay, let's. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So, where did we start? All right, cool. There's a bunch of classes. Just so you guys know, if you guys have no clue what we're talking about, I've been working on my own tabletop RPG, and the idea of it is that it's a tactical-based combat tabletop RPG that's supposed to be fast-paced and easy to kind of pick up and play, but complex in terms of, I guess, the choices and the customization of specific characters, which also kind of bleeds into or your specific character as a player, as well as the cool, awesome stacking you can do in the NPCs, which I guess we'll handle on the next podcast episode, probably whenever we talk about Grand Saga again.
Unless we have some recaps and stuff we want to do, we can spread this out too.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll see what the schedule is like.
We'll see the schedule. Yes. So yeah, the first class is the Acrobat. So the Acrobat's like expert death-defying leaps and acrobatics. Your maneuvers are hard to track, and you attack from unexpected angles, and you slip through your opponent's defenses. At least that's what the flavor text I've written is about. But yeah, so every character in Grand Saga, or every class, I should say, has a core ability, and every time you choose that class, whether it be at the beginning of character creation or later on when you are leveling up, you can multi-class. It is good and encouraged to multi-class in my game. It has the flip ability, which is a basic physical technique. Which means, I guess, I've never actually gone over what the actions are.
Yeah, we could get into the mechanics of things as you explain them, so this could also be a way to explain certain game mechanics. So what does a basic physical technique mean?
So every action pretty much in combat is so you have 3 actions in combat. And basic actions take 1 of those actions, special actions take 2 of those actions, and super actions take 3. So basically, it's like super actions are really big and they take your whole turn, but the payout is usually worth it. But also because the way that you can have physical actions and techniques and magical actions and techniques. So you think about like you punching somebody versus casting a spell or something like that, and then the difference between like actions and techniques. Techniques don't involve an attack roll specifically, and usually does not interact with or do harm or damage to an opponent or like a enemy. Usually it's kind of like it affects you, affects your allies. It's just kind of like an action that isn't an attack, as well as the attack is straight up like it has to target like an enemy, and it does damage usually, and it's about doing the violence.
Right. So basic physical technique means it takes 1 of the actions on your turn to do something physical, but that only it doesn't do damage. It applies something to yourself or others. Yes.
So, but yeah, specifically, it's like there's other, I guess, passive bonuses or abilities that trigger off of whether you're doing an attack or a technique or stuff like that. So but flip is so it removes prone and you leap 4, which means you move 4, but essentially it's kind of like you get to fly for a little bit, like you just kind of bound into the air. And you're also able to mount a combatant, which in my game you're able to actually ride bigger combatants, kind of like in Monster Hunter or like I guess Shadow of the Colossus. That's like a pretty good example where you're able to jump on top of them and ride them and get some bonuses of attacking them, as well as being on higher ground. So leap, just if you're an acrobat, you're just able to just jump onto anybody essentially. And because you're kind of airborne during the process of the leap movement, you're able to kind of ignore vertical distances. So the core mechanic for the acrobat is just it's this kind of idea of you jumping around the battlefield, you kind of getting around people's people trying to block you and things like that. So cool. Lots of movement.
Yeah. So that's like the core ability that everyone who takes Acrobat as a class will get.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's get into some of the more, I guess, the unique stuff, and then we can also, talk a bit more about how they play into how you want the class to function according to that description you read earlier, the flavor text you read earlier.
I don't like writing for myself. It makes me feel self-conscious.
Nah, that's why we're talking about it in front of people, so now you're writing for other people.
This is the raw game dev life. Where you doubt every single decision you've ever made up until this point. But no, I think this is pretty cool. So let's just look at the aspects. The aspects are, I guess, the aspects of the class, but they're like your abilities that you choose. That's kind of like the basis of how the class functions. And it also has, when you level up, you get more aspects from whatever classes that you actually have. So the first one we have here, so should we just go through all of them, or like?
So I'm thinking for this episode, we can do something similar to what we did with the kineticist. We just read through most of the stuff. We don't have to go through every single one. Maybe just the ones that you think exemplify the class a bit more, or that you think are the most interesting, and sort of, again, explain what this class is supposed to do.
Yeah, okay.
And anything that actually, because you do have some, like you were talking about before, you have some special actions here, you have some reactions here. So anything that lets you sort of explain a bit more about the mechanics of the game.
Yeah, definitely. So let's just go through. I think actually the Acrobat, in my opinion, the Acrobat was kind of like the third class I actually ever put together, because it was a very clear I guess idea that I'm trying to get across. So dodge actually used to be the core ability for the Acrobat, but I tried to make it like an action that people can do. So when you successfully pass a save roll, so if you were able to avoid an attack, you get to leap 2. So you're just able to, keep moving. So even if someone's trying to attack you, you can, if you successfully save, you can maybe get out of cover, maybe advance yourself a little bit. But the idea of dodge is like you're just, again, it's always all about speed, always all about jumping over people. Tumble through is a reaction, which is like when you move adjacent to a combatant, you can just move through a combatant's space, ignoring the spaces that it occupies, and continue their movement from any adjacent space. So actually, in terms of like, if you were able to dodge, I guess if you ever successfully save, you can trigger dodge, which lets you leap 2, as well as if you leap next to somebody, you can use the reaction tumble through and just move through their space. And
so how does how do reactions work in terms of actions in Grand Saga?
So every character gets the use of one reaction per turn. So on anyone's turn, any combatant can use a reaction. But like in Grand Saga, like all the other actions in Grand Saga, you cannot duplicate reactions or actions. So you can only use tumble through once per round, but at anyone's turn, including your own, you can use tumble through as long as you meet the conditions to trigger it.
Right.
So on your turn, you can move adjacent to somebody with a dash, or even start your turn adjacent to somebody, use your reaction to tumble through, and then continue your movement on the opposite side. So, NPC enemies in Grand Saga can get very large, so they can occupy like a 4x4 space. So tumble through just lets you just move through that entire big body enemy. So again, all about, I guess, really just getting to the back line or moving to wherever you want it to be. The Acrobat definitely has the feeling of like kind of like unbound mobility, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is also kind of exemplified on the next aspect, which is Ankle Breaker, which is a special attack. So it's an agility special physical melee attack, which means it uses the agility, your agility stat to actually roll on. It's a special, which means it uses 2 actions. It's physical, which means it can be augmented by anything that kind of touches on physical. It also goes against, it gets reduced by armor, which armor kind of works on physical attacks. It's a melee attack, so it's kind of like hand-to-hand combat. And it's an attack, I guess. That's what the attack word means. It deals light damage, which in Grand Saga there's 5 types of damage you can do. So there's light damage, which results into 3 HP damage. Heavy damage, which is 6 HP damage. Super damage, which is 9 HP damage. Reliable damage, which is 1 damage, but no matter if you hit or miss, you do that 1 damage because it's reliable. And bonus damage, which is a variable amount of damage that is notified by the amount of bonus damage.
Okay. And yeah, that is something that will also be like explained in the game. And that, I guess, so this is just a way to like quickly and easily have specific numbers of damage that you do each time. So that's just, is that like a little, did you find that's easier just to read through?
Yeah. So it's like I wanted to kind of remove, I wanted to like compound like the quintessential idea of playing like Pathfinder or D&D, where you would roll an attack and then you would roll your damage and then do the math of any addition. Mm-hmm. I wanted to just be easy, like straightforward, like you do light damage and it's 3. There's no rolling involved, because I think the 2-step process actually eats up like a crazy amount of time.
Right. So instead you just make so for this specifically, because it's an agility attack, you make the agility check, and if that succeeds, then you just do the light damage. You don't have to calculate your damage.
Yeah, you don't have to calculate your damage. I mean, there are things like resistances and armor to take into consideration, but or like any other damage reduction things, but essentially it's just an easy way to kind of I guess like to remember, like it's when you see light, it's 3 damage, so there's no math involved in that aspect.
Right.
But also, when you actually hit on a hit, you move through the opponent's or the target's space to an adjacent free space on the other side, and if the character is larger than you, then they also get prone. So the idea of ankle break is that you kind of tumble through, slide, slash at their legs, or like kick out their legs, and you cause like larger foes to kind of just like crumple down and fall down prone. So nice. But most of the attacks you can find in the Acrobat, actually all the attacks you can find in the Acrobat, allows you to move in some way.
Yeah, because you wanted it to be something that's like fast and agile and constantly flipping about.
Yes, constantly flipping about. I do want to touch on the coolest thing I think the Acrobat can have, which is, well, not the coolest thing, but one of the cool, like the newest additions, I think, which is Juggler, which is a reaction. So Juggler, so when you inflict knockback or launch, which a lot of there's ways to just get those tags, which knockback means you like hit them really hard and they travel like horizontally. Launch means that you actually just kind of uppercut them and launch them through the air, DBZ style, like they're blasting off away. But when you inflict knockback or launch with a melee attack specifically, you can leap that many spaces towards the target, and on your next melee attack against the target this turn, it also gains launch 1 in addition. So it's kind of like I guess trying to emulate the kind of like juggle mechanics you have in like fighting games.
Right.
So you'd hit them pretty hard, and then you would follow up behind them, and then get a second hit in, kind of keeping them up in the air. But yeah, or at least getting another hit in. So.
Yeah, so this doesn't give you the hit, but the next hit you do make, it will also continue to launch the enemy.
Yeah, and you can really this could get really nutty with abilities like hurl, like I mentioned a couple of podcasts ago, where it does like launch/knockback 8. So you can you can use hurl and then use juggler to throw them up in the air, then you leap at them in the air, and then you hit them one more time, blasting them even further if you wanted to. That's essentially what the Acrobat's all about.
Do you want to cover any more Acrobat stuff, or do you want to go on to the next class?
Let's go to the next class, because that's kind of like the encapsulation of the. I should say, like, the Acrobat is pretty straightforward of a class, because if you just want a class that you're always moving, always kind of getting around people's stuff, then you can totally like the Acrobat's like kind of on the scale of complexity is like pretty easy to use, but I think kind of tactically rewarding. If every time I think about making a character in this game, it's hard. I'm very hard pressed not to take some aspects from Acrobat, because I think that's the coolest part. Duke would definitely be an Acrobat, I'm pretty sure. So it always comes back to Duke. What would Duke choose? But yeah.
Okay, so let's check out the next class, which is Alchemist.
Yes, the Alchemist, quintessential Alchemist. You brew the potions. Okay, so you break down the world into the base elements and reconstruct them into a more useful form. You craft devastatingly useful potion flask in an instant from the materials you have on hand. So the Alchemist is what it sounds like. You use the supplies, or the supply mechanic in the game, where it's kind of just like stuff you'd use for recipes, essentially, and you can use those supplies to transmute them into like the actual potion flasks, and you can use them immediately. So normally you would have to prepare your potions beforehand, but because the Alchemist is so good at it, you can just do it while in battle. Kind of borrowing, I guess, from the idea that Pathfinder set up for their Alchemist, where it's like you have the ingredients on hand, you kind of just whip everything up really quickly. But specifically, Alchemist gets access to more than the standard amount of, I guess, potion flasks that are already out there, like kind of like healing potions, or I think that the only potions currently that aren't from the Alchemist are just like healing potions that heal wounds, heal ability score damage, or heals HP.
All right. So what are the core abilities of the Alchemist? I see you also have some information here. If someone takes Alchemist as a first level class.
Yeah. So when you take Alchemist as a first level class, just so you don't have to, you can just get into the fight and not have to worry about managing your inventory of supplies. You automatically just start off with some supplies if you choose that first level. So you get 6 blue mercury, which is in terms of the mechanics of the game, supplies, they have tags attached to them. So anything can be a supply. It really is up to the GM to decide if it can be used into making something, and like what aspect does it have. Essence, there's like, I think there's 4 or 5 of supply. So there's essence, which is kind of like magic based materials. Alloys, which is kind of like the metal and minerals and rocks based materials. Reagents, which could be reactive, biological, that kind of stuff. There's parts for, making robotics and things like that. And then there's money. So anything that could have a monetary value, like gemstones, but also could be used as like building materials or something like that. So
right.
Blue Mercury gets the fun ability of being all three that's relevant to the Alchemist, which is essence, alloy, and reagents. And every, I guess, formula that you have access to requires one or more of alloy essence or reagents. So
you mix them by type.
So for instance, the core abilities you have for the Alchemist is Transmute Formula. So when you use the use action, which is how you interact with your items and inventory and consumables, you can just spend materials that you have on hand to create a potion flask. You don't have to do it like beforehand. As well as you get Flask Bomb, which is an item. It's a potion flask. It's a formula. It requires 1 reagent and 1 essence. And when you use with the use action, you can just choose a target that's, adjacent, use the use action, use formula to spend the ingredients, and then apply the Flask Bomb to somebody, which is they get burning and they get knocked back 1. But so instance, if you have 6 blue mercury, you can use 2 blue mercury because they count as a reagent and an essence. So you could just use 2 of those supplies to do it. But let's say you have, I don't know, I think I gave some examples of the supplies. Let's say if you have some scrap metal and some gemstones, you can use some scrap metal and gemstones to make a Flask Bomb, because scrap metal counts as parts and alloy, and gemstones counts as essence and money.
Okay.
Yeah. So so this is like the Alchemist. I find that like I don't know, if you just want to manage your inventory and have that cool like, oh no, I have to wait, I have to like make I want to make something on the fly kind of person, then yeah, the Alchemist is pretty good. I played an Alchemist a lot in Pathfinder first edition, actually. I think it was when I played through Starfall, the Starfall adventure path. I played an Alchemist, and I always found that kind of idea of the mad scientist character pretty cool.
Yeah, I never played one in first edition, but in second edition I found that Alchemists, like, they tend to be, or at least the way I've been playing it, it tends to be more effective to prepare the potions you think you need, because you're not able to make as many if you just do them on the fly. I do like, though, that this specifically focuses on doing those on the fly, because, again, if you want that mad scientist feel, that I'm not prepared, like I'm overly prepared and yet underprepared for this fight, sort of thing.
All at the same time, right? And out of all the classes, like the Alchemist is the one that cares the most about inventory space, which I think is pretty awesome too. It's kind of like you're playing a game within a game, where it's like, for instance, so supplies are so there's finite inventory spaces in my game. So, but supply specifically can stack, but you only can have one type of supply in that inventory slot. So like that 6 amount of blue mercury can fit in one general inventory slot. But if you start picking up other things that your GM kind of gives you, it gives incentive for people to use up their items, because I think like there's a problem with hoarding in games.
Whatever do you mean?
I love Pathfinder, but their weight-based system is really good, because you don't have to like calculate out how much stuff actually weighs. But I think it's too lenient still. With like an average strength stat, you could like carry like a metric ton of stuff. So yeah.
I've never hoarded anything in my life.
Never in a million years. But yeah, so the Flask Bomb is really cool, because you can actually, when you create the Flask Bomb through Transmute, you can also, or when you use the Flask Bomb, I should say, you can add extra reagent to apply it into like a slash area effect. So a slash area effect is, I guess, how did I word it? So it's basically all of the spaces in front of one side of your character. So if you're if you're a size 1 character, the 3 spaces that are adjacent to like one side of you is affected by that area, and then every number that's on slash, like /1, /2, pushes that out into like a square. So it would be a 3x1, or it's like a /2 area would be 3x2. A /3 area would be 3x3. But if you're a size 2 character, your slash area is actually 4. So it would be, so a /2 on a size 2 character is 4x2. I need to probably draw it out when this game actually gets published. But yes, think of it just like a wave emanating out from me. So the idea, if you charge this flask bomb up with more reagents, you can toss it. It has a bigger explosion, and it kind of washes over more.
Right. So it's basically like the size of your character with one square at the top, one square at the bottom, and then one square like a square to the side of you, and then squares at the top and bottom of that. And then based on your size, the one square at the top and bottom of that space on your side is still like your size, but increasing the /X area makes it go further in whichever direction you're pointing the attack in.
Yeah. So the slash area or area attack, it's based on your size. Oh,
Yeah.
Slash size, blah. Too many words. Getting tongue-tied. But yeah, so again, the whole class is just making these potion flasks, and you get all these cool kind of offensive potion flasks. The only other kind of consumable items that you can use offensively are mana. I call them mana rocks. I need to get better at naming stuff, but
I mean, this is development.
yeah, I know. Mana minerals, because I think all of a sudden I just got really into alliterations. So it's like, so I'm like, mana minerals. So they're kind of like crystallized forms of mana or magic that you can just kind of are still volatile. You could just chuck it at somebody and it does something. Like the ignicite is the fire mineral, so you can just using the use action, you can just toss it on somebody and they just start burning, or you can like set the ground on fire, that kind of deal. But the Alchemist just gets kind of those items, which means there's no attack rolls involved, which means the Alchemist can just do the damage to somebody or just apply an effect without rolling a die. So if there's a situation where, you know, somebody thinks he's really hard to hit, or like maybe your stats are too low, or you're just kind of in a bind, like I don't know, you're blinded or something, you could just always just use a potion flask and just apply the thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you're just limited by like your supplies or your the amount you have of your inventory.
Yeah, for sure. And that's exactly the way it is. So it's like kind of like you during your downtime, you're kind of planning ahead, as well as you're kind of keeping track of like, oh, what's the risk reward of like, oh, do I want to spend all of my potions in this fight, or all my resources in this fight? I'm not going to be able to recover some of it, like, you know, and which thing do I use it on? But let's go into actual potion flasks, because I think that'll the potion flasks you get access to are kind of varied. They are varied pretty good. So Magic Coat and Metal Sheen are kind of boosting ones. So Magic Coat, you're able to regain some ward and armor, and you can spend extra to increase the ward or armor gained back up to your starting amount. So let's say if you had 3 armor and you've just been hit twice, so you're down to 1 armor, you can use a Magic Coat to add back an extra armor so you can absorb 1 more hit.
Yeah, 1 more physical attack.
Sorry, yes.
For armor, and then
Yeah, and 1 for ward. Metal Sheen gives you bonus damage on your next attack, and you can just increase the amount of damage that you can deal by the amount of aloe you use. So kind of like spreading this magic goo onto your weapon, hitting somebody pretty hard with it. And then poison gas, it is what it sounds. It poisons somebody, and poison is actually a pretty good status to inflict, because it does damage based on the amount of statuses your target or the person has on them. So if you're poisoned and burning and dazed, when poison ticks, it ticks for 3 HP damage. It also gets around armor and ward, but it doesn't get around stuff like resistance. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. But again, you can spend X reagents to make this, instead of a 1 target thing, to a slash area, because you're supercharging the poison. One of my favorites, I think, sticky goo. It's what what it says on the tin. It creates a sticky goo, and you can just immobilize somebody. So you just kind of slap this putty on them, and then all of a sudden they're kind of restrained and stuck to the ground. As well, you can supercharge it again to make the area to be wider, so you can, sticky goo a whole bunch of people.
Yes.
And instant block. So instant block, these are really straightforward. So instant block creates a size 1 line of sight blocking object. You kind of toss this flask on the ground. It's self-expanding. I think I had the flavor. It's like a self-expanding, hardening polymer. Has many uses. So you can block up a hallway. You can stick it onto a side of a wall to make a platform. You can put it on the ground beneath you to raise yourself up in the air. But the only thing is it just has to be enough space for it to happen. So you can't put a size 3 block into a size 2 space. It'll just crumble.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like a big foam attack that widens and then suddenly hardens, and then you either trap people in it or you just block off an area.
Yeah, which it's super cool. I just love the amount of uses that you can do with this thing. Is pretty awesome. So yeah, you can make the size. You can make the size bigger if you want to spend more ingredients. And you're also the alchemist, because they're dealing with all these compounds. You can choose to gain you could get cure all, which is at the end of your turn you just clear a status, because you can just you're so versed in chemicals that you could just whip up something really quickly and just be like, I'm fine. As well as you can take flask toss, which allows you to target instead of using the use action for potion flask adjacent to somebody, you can just throw the potion, which then turns all of the /X abilities into blast abilities, which is kind of like an area effect. Double dose lets you use 2 potions with 1 use action, so you can, when you use formula, you can create 2 potions instead of 1 and just apply them together. As well as lead to goal, which I think is actually probably the one of the most important things. I guess of all the abilities, you could probably never go wrong with lead to goal, because what it does is when you use the transmute formula, you can actually disassemble an item in your inventory. So you can disassemble an already created potion flask and use those components. Like, say if you had created a flask bomb beforehand, that counts as 1 reagent, 1 essence. So you can use lead to gold to turn that back into 1 alloy and 1 essence to then transform it into something else. So into whatever else you want to transform it into. So if you get a different material, or if you get let's say an elixir or something that counts as probably a couple of reagents, you can turn that elixir into a flask bomb if you wanted to.
Okay.
Yeah. That one is actually based off of, I think, I'm a big fan of anime, obviously. So this is Full Metal Alchemist, where you're able to just kind of just clap your hands and transform anything into anything, that kind of deal. But that's kind of where it came from, where you just kind of disassemble what the components are and put it back to something new.
Yeah, that sounds cool. I feel like I should get around to watching that, but I've heard the beginning is very sad, and it's I don't want to watch that on purpose.
Yeah, the beginning is very sad, and because the first run of it was happening during when the manga was still going, it has a different end. So there's Full Metal Alchemist, and there's Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, which the Brotherhood material, Brotherhood follows the manga material more to the T, so the ending is the same as in the manga. But because the Full Metal Alchemist, the original run, the anime, that first part, the first sad part, is fleshed out way more in that one. In Brotherhood, they kind of move past it, so you they cover it, but it goes pretty quick. So maybe you do watch Brotherhood, so it's less time to be sad. That's probably what I'm getting at.
Look, I'm just gonna rewatch JoJo's.
Fine.
All right. Is there anything else in the Alchemist you want to cover, or do you want to get to the next class? I'm realizing we're actually only covering a few, I think.
I mean, we only did 2, and I've been talking a lot about it.
Yeah, we're already at like 40 minutes, so I think maybe we'll have time for a couple more, and maybe we can spread these out a bit more, and we can talk about them as the game develops.
Yeah, for sure. I'll also speed up a little bit, I think.
No, I think it's interesting to get into like why the class works the way it does. I think it's more interesting to get those details than to do more of them. Because we can do however many episodes we want, because we can do as many episodes as we want to record.
That is fair. Okay, so let's move on to the Arcanist. Apparently, I have lots of A names. It is the most used letter in all of the things. But the Arcanist, you're a sorcerer that can affect space and time.
Ooh.
Yeah, you channel your magic to mimic the cosmos to the earth. I probably should rewrite the sentence, but you are a space wizard with the power of gravity, time, and space. Your abilities allow you to manipulate the battlefield, pushing and pulling enemies and allies. So as it says on the tin, yeah, that's what you're the space wizard, and the core ability is gravity. It's a spirit special magic range 5 attack. Takes 2 actions, uses spirit, it's magic, and it's range 5. It deals 1 light damage. I guess it deals light damage, as well as it has the shred tag, shred 1, which means that so before the attack, I guess, applies damage to like armor or ward, or I guess ward in this instance, you actually reduce the ward by 1. It automatically just comes off on a hit. As well, if it does hit, the target gets fatigued and grounded. So fatigued means that they get 1 less action because they're tired. As well as they only move half the amount of spaces. And grounded is that they just can't go. They can't like fly, or can they leap, or is that? So they can't gain airborne, which leap lets you gain airborne. So you're just not able to use any of those abilities. Like you can't fly or leap or say you have airborne or get the airborne condition. Right. So yeah, you call forth gravity, and you make it 10 times fold, and your foes buckle under their own weight. So you just put on the band hammer. You're like, nope, you're gonna stay. Any of those flying enemies try something. Yeah, and you're just like, you're grounded. Go to your roof. Which is the ground. So yeah, the Arcanist, again, it's all about controlling space, like in like the terms of fighting and in terms of space and physics. So a lot of the aspects are kind of revolved around moving people, augmenting stuff, kind of, I guess, enhancing your own teammates with time magic and stuff like that too. So, and like putting things to kind of like block line of sight and like block movement and augment movement, that kind of stuff. So the two I think are the coolest abilities is, well, other than like the stances that you get, is Rift. So Rift is a basic magic /1 technique, which means it's not an attack, so he doesn't do damage. You actually spend 1 spirit. So every time when you see the word spend means that you use that resource, right? So in the Alchemist, you would have to spend like a reagent and a essence to create a flask bomb. To use Rift, you have to spend 1 spirit. So it means you reduce your spirit by 1. So you had a spirit of 7. You reduce it by 1. You have a spirit of 6 until you recover that, or until the fight gets done. It's kind of like you're pulling more out of getting, like you're pushing yourself more, so you can do this ability. But it creates like an area of effect. Rift creates an area of effect, so it blocks line of sight, and then combatants that can enter and continue can enter the space and continue their movement onto any free adjacent space. So the idea is that you open up a rift of space-time. You kind of like expand a bubble of space, of like null space. Right. So that space has been created, and you basically just like, if you try to move onto it, you can continue your movement anywhere along that area, which does include through objects. So you can like make like a portal through like a wall if you wanted to, and just have your teammates or you go through it. But additionally, it blocks line of sight. So it's good and bad, because your NPCs can obviously use that and teleport to you if you wanted to. It's a bridge. And it's a slash technique, bridge. So you can walk like a standard sized character can just move like 3 spaces instantly. Yeah. Ooh.
wizard.
Get over gaps. You can like line up multiple multiple rifts if you would like to. If you want to spend all your spirit to line up like a big space-time runway, then you can if you wanted to.
Yeah, but that will affect your ability to actually make any spirit-related checks in that combat.
That's true, but it does block line of sight, so I mean you're not getting attacked by spells and stuff unless someone comes after you and whacks you, which would be pretty easy because they can just teleport through the rift. So it's like a double-edged sword. But then there's the next one, which is singularity. So these kind of like time-space constructs is kind of like where the Arcanist lives, right? So it's a same thing. So it's a basic magic range 5 technique summon, which means it actually places summons usually place like an ally, combatant, or object onto the battlefield that is under your control. Which is pretty cool. So you spend 1 spirit, you get a size 1 ally object called Singularity, and it has 6 HP, is immune to physical damage because obviously it's a little mini black hole.
Fair enough.
But it has 2 abilities one's called Distort Gravity, which means targets within a burst 2 area, which means 2 spaces away from its occupied space, are off balance, which means they get a difficulty on attacks, and they gain you gain an accuracy they get a difficulty in attacks and a difficulty to saves depending if you're a NPC or a player. So basically you're just going to be easier to hit and you're going to be harder to do your attacks.
Yeah,
that's kind of what off balance means. It means that it's off balanced. But then the other ability called Event Horizon, which means that in a burst 1 area, so all the spaces adjacent to it, it blocks line of sight for range attacks that pass through it. But not for targets that are like within it. So basically, it's like if you try to shoot like an arrow or something trying to go past that area, it just gets absorbed by the singularity. It's kind of, you can use it as defensive. You can use it as you can summon like a singularity to make targets easier to hit, as like the gravity gets distorted and they start floating around and getting pulled everywhere. So like they're easier to hit. But you could also position it in front of you, so you can like, again, all about control spacing, all about kind of like blocking line of sight, that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's like the Arcanist is.
So you can take cover behind a black hole.
Yeah, you can take cover behind your own black hole, man. It's all good. But there are also some nuttier things you can do with Singularity if you start comboing it with other classes that affect summons, which gets kind of wild. It also has, more aspects. Force Field, which means Force Field, you gain base armor equal to half of your spirit. So you get base armor based on your might normally. But if you choose Force Field, it means if you have a high spirit set, all of a sudden you're like gaining more armor. You can absorb more hits, more physical hits, which typically like the magic-oriented or I guess spirit-oriented characters will have less of. But yeah, the idea is like you're just kind of reinforcing your body with space magic.
Yeah, I like the concepts and the ideas and like the narrative this class can create. Seems very, very powerful and very weird.
Yeah. It's special. Definitely another fun class that I had fun with putting together. There's also the 2 abilities. There's a lot of abilities that kind of like are, one is the opposite of the other kind of deal. So attract and repel. Their attract is it's a spirit special magic range 10 technique. This one, because it's kind of so powerful, is not really an attack. It requires an ability check. So ability checks are, you still try to roll equal to or lower than your stat, but it's not an attack roll. It's kind of like you channeling your own energy to yourself, not really applying it to somebody else. It's like how well you're going to be able to do it, essentially. It doesn't like interact the same way. Right.
So it's like it's so applying it to a technique. Like it's still a technique. It's just that you still have to make a check to be able to successfully do this thing.
There's still a roll associated with it. So most techniques don't really have a roll associated with it, but this one does.
Okay.
But attract so it's a range 10, so it's a pretty big range. But you just choose somebody, any target, like could be ally or enemy, and the target is launched adjacent to you. So a launch is similar to leap, where a target gets airborne, but when they end their movement, they actually gain prone, because they're kind of like it's a forceful movement. So it's kind of like you're just kind of yanking somebody from one place and putting them next to you, which is pretty cool.
Right. So it's force movement towards you or away from you, and you can drop them on maybe if you have a summon or if you have an ally nearby that you want them to be next to, or bring them up to you so your pals can just curb stop them.
Yeah, or I mean, if there's like a pit, there's nothing stopping somebody from using a track to yanking somebody onto the square where the pit is, and they can just fall into the pit. That's also a pretty funny way of using it. But repel is the opposite, where you launch somebody 10 spaces straight, but you have to be in a straight line. It has to be 10 spaces away, so you kind of just repel them maximally away. Which is a good way to be like, I need to get somebody off of me, or like, oh, I want to set something up and launch somebody next to, another an ally, so they can like follow up with another attack or something like that.
Yeah.
Jump is a basic magic technique. For one action, you can just teleport 4, which means you teleport. So it's like you just go to that spot, no ifs, ands, or buts. You're just there. Or you can teleport adjacent to any singularity or rift area. So if you plop down a singularity 1 space and then you run away to the other side of the battlefield, you could always return back to that space as long as the singularity is still there with a jump.
Right. And then so the requirement for that would be you've already spent your action on summoning the singularity, and no one's done enough damage to it that it just blows up.
Yeah, essentially. There's also accelerate and decelerate, which allows you to add. So it also requires an ability check, but it's applies quicken to a target, and decelerate applies slow. And quicken and slow are 2 conditions that give you more attacks, or not attacks, actions, I should say. So slow reduces the amount of actions you have, as well as it makes you go last, which is pretty cool in terms of like kind of manipulating the initiative order, essentially. Or if you have a really strong enemy, and you're like, I don't want that guy to go next, if you use decelerate, he's slowed or they're slowed, they don't get to go until the end, after everybody else who isn't slowed has gone.
Right. And then quicken is like the opposite.
Yeah, so you go first. You have to go first in initiative, as well as you get an extra action. So normally you have 3, you get 4.
Right. And initiative in this game, it's like each side chooses who to. It's like Lancer initiative.
Yeah, it's like Lancer initiative. So it's kind of like you go, I go. Like the GM goes, or the players go, then the GM goes, the players go, then the GM goes.
Right, and then the players among them choose who to take the next turn, and the GM chooses which character to take the next turn.
Yeah. And then this class also has 2 stances that you can choose from. So stances, you choose to enter a stance at the start, basically at the start of your turn before you take any actions. The first one is 0G, which is a stance, and you just get airborne. You just decide that gravity's not for me. You could just fly. All your movement becomes fly. You get all the benefits of being airborne and all the detriments of being airborne, I guess. But you just start floating.
Screw gravity. So a stance is just like a condition you apply to yourself, but you have to do it at the start of your turn.
Yeah. So you just kind of take a 0G stance. You're just like, nah, man, peace. Nice. Fly away. And then the cooler one, which is, in my opinion, like I said, 0G is the normal one. Orbital is the quirky one. So orbital is a stance. You have to spend a spirit, so you have to put a little bit more into it. When you do take that stance, every time you take a stance, you have to, if it does a spend requirement, you have to use that resource. So when you move, you could also move objects and allies wholly within burst 1. So anything that's like wholly within a burst 1 radius of you. So usually characters and objects are size 1. So anybody adjacent to you, you can just move them. You as you walk. As like the idea is that they just like you like I said, the flavor text here is like you embody the heavens. Objects and allies swirl around you like moons. So you just kind of like, I am the sun now, and you are all of my planets.
Yeah.
Let's move.
You are the center of gravity, he said,
Yeah.
not making a JoJo's reference.
Oh, totally not. Of course. I mean, I'm not Calvin. I don't know.
I mean, yes.
Everything's a JoJo reference with you. But so to finish the explaining, so orbital, you can place any moved objects or allies within another free space within burst 1. So it's like at the end of the movement that you do, you can reposition everybody that you actually moved. So
nice.
Yeah. So actually, if you copy, so here's the thing too, right? So with let's say these 3 classes, right? If you choose the multi-class in these 3 classes, you can go into orbital stance, right? Then you can use like instant block to create a size 1 block, and then with leap you can then and the block leap 4 and just you can have mobile cover as like you're jumping around with this swirling block with you, and you can position it to like block line of sight so people can attack you, or use the leap off of yourself. Knock people, like you can use it to knock people onto so they fall on the ground, all sorts of nonsense you can do.
Yeah, like it gives you a lot of great support options. That's what I really like about this game, is how you can mix things together to come up with your own unique strategies per character.
Yeah, and that's
I think
like
we
the
have
basis of the Arcanist.
I think we have just enough time for one more character, because I really wanted to talk about the archer.
Oh really? I guess you're like, that's like your dude. You're always like, where's the dude with the bow and arrow? I want to be Batman.
That is, yeah, you are not wrong. You are not incorrect with that statement.
Well, so as the archer, your arrows fly true and your attacks can find their mark with ease. When you focus on an attack, you can aim for specific areas on your foe.
Yeah.
So the core abilities is bow shot. You got 2. So bow shot is an agility basic physical range 6 arcing attack. And arcing means that you don't need line of sight as long as you're able to follow a path to them, because you just kind of aim upwards and the arrow goes where like it follows the arc. It does light damage, and it has another ability baked into it called follow-up shot. So if your next action you use is the shoot action, which is kind of like another like a standard action, which is it's an agility basic physical range 5 attack, I think, or range 3 attack. You can just use the profile of bow shot for that attack, and it counts as bow shot. But it basically means that if you choose the shoot action as your standard action, then you can use bow shot twice, because you're just bam bam, you're Legolasp.
Nice.
Yeah. I don't know why I call him Legolasp, but I like it because he's the character's a meme, man. Like,
yeah, I saw him jumping on those rocks.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely an archer acrobat. I'm pretty sure that's how I would describe what he would be. So the other core bonus, Lancer, the other core ability, is aim. So when you spend focus on an agility ranged attack, you can choose to apply an additional aim effect, which is in the aspects, on hit, and deal 1 bonus damage, like a +1 bonus damage. So you get to do a little bit of extra damage. Focus is an action you take to you focus on your next attack, so you get accuracy when you on the next attack roll that you use before the end of your next turn. So it can travel between turns, or you get that, I guess, pseudo condition between turns. But yeah, it allows you to do kind of some nutty stuff with the aspects, like the aspect like leg shot. It's just the first one here. So leg shot, it's an aim. On hit, the target gains prone, and then on crit, the target is immobilized because you're able to like pin them to the ground. So that's kind of the idea of the archers. Like you are like you're calling your shots, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, like that's sometimes difficult to do in other games where you want to hit a specific thing, but there's no like mechanic for it.
Yeah, and it's like, I think it's cool in narrative, and you're able to like adjust on the fly, I think, because just doing damage is good, but I like the idea is like the archer is able to apply status effects, or just like get like debuff enemies at the same time, just with a well placed shot, right? Kind of that's that's how I envision like cool archer characters wanting to do, or wanting to be. On top of that, if you're just taking a moment to like, the cool moment where the archer like, or like, you remember like Hawkeye just like on like Avengers where he would just be like, oh wait a minute, I got him.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, just like that split second of like he just waits and he's like lets it go, and then it's just like the dude just gets annihilated.
Yep. I know what you mean. I saw all the Avengers movies. I saw all of Arrow. I know exactly what you're on about. I haven't seen Brave yet. I'll get around to it.
All right, well, Calvin, this is a good class for you, man. Next time we do a session, we should just do this. So yeah, you get 3 flavors of aim so far in development. There's leg shot, like we said, arm shot, which makes the target weaken, so their attacks are actually halved. They half the damage. Or on crit, they just disabled, so they can't make physical attacks. Wing shot, which makes the target grounded, and then on crit the target's grounded and prone, so you get double. You literally like wing them out of the sky and they go on the ground.
Yes.
Hawkeye, which when you spend focus, instead of gaining the extra accuracy, you can just double the range. So for instance, base level bow shot is range 6. If you have Hawkeye and you spend focus on, instead of getting 2 dice on the roll, you can get 1 dice on the roll and target somebody 12 spaces away. So it's like, you just make that possibly long shot. But you still also gain the benefits of the aim abilities. Arrow volley, it's agility, special, physical, range 6, arcing blast attack, which means in a blast area you can target, you just chuck a bunch of arrows on your bow and you take the shot. It also counts as bow shot for applying other abilities. So, you do the multi-shot kind of thing.
Yeah, so you can follow that up with a multi-shot.
Yeah. The idea is like you target all the people in the area, you load up the arrows, and you just pull it back and let all 3 or 4 or whatever arrows fly. Seeking, which is a arts. Arts are augments to attacks, and the way that I guess it's kind of intended is that you kind of add the name to the attack. So you can do, like when you were, I guess, using it, you're like, I'm using a seeking bow shot. So you add, usually they increase the amount of actions the attack requires. So when you apply seeking to arrow shot, this attack both counts as magic and physical, because you're charging your arrow with your spirit, your mana, and you can target enemies outside of line of sight as long as you can draw a path towards them. So it's like if somebody is like in a building, you can just shoot a seeking arrow and it'll go straight to them, I should say.
Yeah, definitely. Archer next time we do this.
Yeah. Oh, on top of being so having the arcing property on attacks allow you to ignore cover, which is one of the main defensive sources you can get for of trying to avoid damage, is the terrain. So you just kind of shoot over the terrain.
Yeah.
Another art is strafing, which allows you, so it increases the, I'm call it like attack level. I guess I should just call it attack level. You increase the attack level, so from like a basic attack it becomes a special attack, and special attacks become
could be level attacks, or duration, or I don't know. Whatever you want the term to be, but it's just like however many actions it takes up.
Yeah. You basically spend an extra action, and you gain shifting before or after making the attack. And shift is movement that you move the entire amount of. You can't alter it or change it in any way. So including, enemies that say like you move less, terrain, you just move the 3 spaces. Regardless of anything like that. So you're able to like kind of shoot and scoot, or scoot and shoot, I should say.
That is not what we will be calling it.
The good old shoot scoot.
No.
But the cooler ability, I should say, I think one of the coolest abilities in the archers aspects is Artemis. So this requires you to be outside, so you can't use this indoors. And at the start of combat, you launch an arrow into the heavens. You shoot it up, and then it just becomes a part of the sky. It just goes ding, gone.
like Team Rocket.
Yeah, like Team Rocket. Then you roll a d6, and this indicates the round at which the arrow comes down on. So at the end of the round, you deal damage indicated to any combatant on the field. So 1, it's 1 reliable damage. 2 to 3, it's light. 4 to 5 is heavy, and then on the 6th round, it does super damage, which is like the max damage of the game. So if a fight's dragging on and you shot it, I just love the idea that you're just so good at what you do that you can pre-plan ahead.
You know where someone's going to be in 6 rounds. I love the absurdity of this. Like the idea that the fight will go on for 5 or 6 rounds in the first place, and then on that round, just an arrow out of nowhere that you shot when the fight started.
And you're just like, I just love the idea of like, you're exactly where it's kind of like, what's it called? It's that bad movie. Is it Wanted? I think it's called Wanted. You know the ones where they curve the bullets? Yeah. So there's the impossible sniper shot where the person is like 5 kilometers away shooting through buildings and people and all sorts of stuff, right? And it's just like there's just an X on the ground, and then like as soon as the target walks on the X, they're like, oh no, they look down, they see the X, they're like, oh no, and then they just get shot. That's like how I imagine Artem is working. It's like the fight's going on, the bad guy's like ha ha ha, and then all of a sudden just boom, right where you need it.
Yeah, I want it. I want to do that.
Yeah, true. Bullseye is kind of utility aspect. On a reaction when you defeat a combatant with a agility ranged attack, so like any of your toolkits, you just get to use the focus action as a reaction. So if you spend focus on attack, you can just immediately get back. So the way that reactions work in terms of duplicating, I guess, already used actions, as long as it's a reaction, you can duplicate it. So if you use focus in the same round, defeat an opponent, you can always use focus as a reaction, but you can't use the focus reaction again. The bullseye reaction again.
Right.
Because basically it's like you're taking the text of focus, the ability, the effects that you get from focus, and attaching it to bullseye, so you can't.
So you're basically using focus twice, but one's an action and one's a reaction.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's exactly how it works. The last two are trick arrow and spell arrow. You can apply melee arts to bow shots actions, and it also counts as an agility melee ranged attack. And spell arrow, you can use incantations, which is basically the magic version of arts, to apply to bow shot actions, and this effect counts as an agility magic range attack. So again, this class is focused on you are the bowman. You do bowman stuff. So so for instance, for spell arrow, there is in the preview for the Black Magician class. The Black Magician has a bunch of incantations, like Lance specifically, I think is the one I visually think of. So Lance, it changes a basic magic attack into a special magic attack, and the attack becomes Beam 1. So Beam 1 is an area of effect, and it basically it travels in a straight line from you, and it's whatever the number is wide. And it travels the entire length of the battlefield until it reaches a solid wall or an object or a combatant that's bigger than the actual size. And everybody within that area gets affected by the shot. So the idea that and it has all the same properties as the attack being used. So you can use like a lance bow shot to shoot somebody at the other end of the map, ignoring cover and all sorts of nonsense. And I like the idea of just like charging up a magic bow shot and it just flies. It just flies. There's nothing can stop it.
I mean, that does sound cool, but I'm picturing a boxing glove arrow with a trick arrow ability, so
oh yeah, that's always the go-to. My favorite trick arrow idea is just an arrow with a hand and it just has a gun. The arrow flies, it pops out, and it just shoots somebody. Oh man.
Nah. I mean, I don't know. I'll see what character I ended up making.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure, Calvin. You could make a flexible. We'll see. I actually don't know. Oh, there is another cool preview is the Bruiser, who is the dude who punches people, and boxing glove arrow. So there's an ability called Whirlwind. It basically increases the attack level by 1, so it basically becomes special, which becomes super. You changes the ability use instead of use might instead of spirit or agility for attacks, but it just deals 3 knockback. So I like the idea that your knockback, your punching glove trick arrow from bowshot is just like it just like wins somebody so hard, it just sends them
just
flying.
Knocks them back. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe I won't be pure archer. All right. Well, we covered 4 classes today. I think maybe we can do that in chunks of 3 and 4 if you want to talk about the game a bit more. And then again, we can keep discussing things you might be adding as we talk them out and describe them, and updates you might be making. I just think it would be interesting for people to see the development process on this sort of thing.
Yeah. I would love to talk more about how, at least if you guys listening wants to hear more about the ideas behind or how I thought about these classes. I think that was the most fun I've had making this is just how do I make this feel good? Right. How do I make this Archer Man feel cooler than all the other Archer Mans I've ever seen in my life? And yeah, hopefully I did. I mean, Calvin's really stoked, and he's the Archer Man king. So
apparently,
yeah.
So again, if you guys want to check this game out for yourself, there's going to be a link to a Google Doc below where you can check out the rules, give them a read through, let us know what you think. There'll be a link in the document to the contact page on our site, winwithdice.ca. You can submit a message through there. You can send it through Twitter or Facebook if you're on those sites. You can send it through our email directly if you see our email on YouTube. YouTube used to allow direct messages, but they stopped, probably for good reason. But you can also leave a comment below. But I think that's going to be it. Anything else you want to say about the game before I continue with the outro here?
Yeah, if all it's between the Acrobat, Alchemist, Arcanist, Archer, or when you check out the document or anything we talked about, let me know which one sounds the coolest to you.
Yeah.
I'm always excited to hear other people's opinions about the classes, and which one would you choose to play as out of the ones we discussed today?
Yeah. And while you're down there, be sure to check out all the links to all the awesome people we've talked to, especially all the Lancer creators, because we've got links to all their stuff below. Additionally, I want to shout out to the Untold Stories project, where I'm at pretty much every week playing some kind of game. Because we're talking about archery, Freedom League Dark is coming back soon, and I will be back with the Bowmen after the whole magic adventure all of us had in the first season. There's a lot of fun stuff happening there that I don't want to say too much about, but it's going to be very wacky, that next campaign. And also the Gemstars campaign, where I'm playing a magical girl in a fantasy world. We're dealing with some conspiracies as well as this 4th dimensional imp or whatever.
Nice. Okay, cool.
It's just showing up and being annoying. And then hopefully we get our beach episode sometime soon.
So it's the payoff, right?
But that's gonna be it for now. Any last thing to say before we head off into space?
Nope.
All right. Well, for all of our arrow volleying GMs and players out there, just remember to keep on winning with dice, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.